We really should stop this fighting. Otherwise, we'll miss the fireworks.
There won't be any fireworks.
And here we go.
Well, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? The moment most of us have been waiting for is finally here. Now that a significant amount of time has passed since the premiere of the Powerpuff Girls grand TV movie event from 2017, aptly named The Power of Four, I think it's time to return to the subject once again and see how this so-called fourth Powerpuff Girl truly stacks up. But before I get into all of that, I just wanted to let you all know that I made a Patreon page. I won't spend too long on this because I don't want to bore you with the details, but basically I've decided to go on ahead and make a page where you guys can support me and the channel directly if you so choose. With my recent graduation from college and now that I'm living on my own, I need to be able to afford rent and bills, and every little bit helps. This is entirely optional, so don't feel obligated to pledge if you don't want to, but if you do pledge, you'll get some nifty little rewards in return, such as your name appearing on screen in my videos, or access to behind the scenes content that I'll be sharing exclusively for my patrons. This could include things like video thumbnails, teasers for upcoming videos, or possibly even polls of ideas that you can vote on for future videos I make. I really do want to stress how $1 can go a long way. Seriously, if every single person watching this video right now donated $1 to me a month, I would be able to make these videos as a full-time job. Of course, I have no expectations that that will ever happen, so those of you that do consider pledging to me on Patreon, I would seriously appreciate it. Thank you. Anyways, let's get on with the video.
She's fierce.
She's a hero!
She's fantastic. She's family.
No powers at the table, please.
She's the fourth Powerpuff Girl. And you can only see her in the Powerpuff Girls Power of Four, a special movie event Sunday at 5:30 on your Cartoon Network.
As I'm sure many of you recall, I made an initial impressions video on my channel describing my thoughts on how I felt the special had performed immediately after viewing it for the first time. And just as I predicted that my opinions would change from the initial video, I can fortunately say that they have differed quite a bit now that I've given it a closer analysis. So I have a decent quantity of new ideas to add to this conversation. Unlike the initial impressions video I did where I just lumped everything together, I'm going to be breaking down each episode into individual segments so that I can give every portion more focus rather than just giving a brief overview of the entire thing all at once. There is a lot of content to cover here in each of these episodes, and I figure it'd be best if I treated each part like its own episode review. I'd also like to open these episodes by discussing a unique aspect of the special or Bliss. That way I can divvy it up and not just spend the first 15 minutes here talking about all of this intro stuff at once before even getting to Find Your Bliss. I figure splitting everything up before each episode is probably a smarter idea. I guess that means I should get started then. Okay, first things first, we're gonna give the Power of Four a brief history before diving right into it, starting with the very first leaked image that popped up sometime prior to the event's announcement. Now, a lot of people saw this image and immediately questioned what this meant. Is this a new Powerpuff Girl? Did they retcon Bunny? Is this one of the villains in disguise? Things like that. We didn't really hear anything for several months, but then on September 6th, 2017, the official Cartoon Network Twitter account posted this teaser image hinting at a new Powerpuff Girl that was on the horizon, and immediately the connection was made. A lot were also caught off guard by the dark-skinned Powerpuff Girl, but you know what? I welcome this idea. Seeing a different multi-ethnic Powerpuff Girls group working together to fight bad guys and evildoers, that'd be awesome. This is not the way I'd go about that though, because let's face it, Bliss shows up for the special and then appears in the show like 3 more times. It's clear she's not a mainstay, and I'm doubtful that this decision was made with the purest intentions and not for media publicity and ratings. They didn't even hesitate for a second. The special aired at 5:30 and ran for 90 minutes with commercials. This tweet was posted at 7 p.m. sharp, which tells us that just like the rest of the show, Bliss likely only existed to sell merchandise rather than to to integrate a genuinely compelling character integrated into a former flagship series with a passionate story to go along with it. It disgusts me how this network treats its property like this. Honestly. But anyways, that's enough dilly-dallying. I think it's about time we dive into this first episode for real. Let's get to it.
Bubbles! You broke my Clean Locker Award! Yeah! And you melted my Candleman action figure!
Alright, so like I mentioned previously, the special is split into 5 different parts, with the first being this introductory episode titled Find Your Bliss, in which the girls find Bliss. Well, actually it's more like Bliss finds them. You'll see. Before we begin, I just want to mention that for some odd reason, Find Your Bliss is the only episode in this entire special that doesn't have a title card of pink, green, and blue. Nah, instead this is treated as a Bubbles-centric episode, even though all 3 of the girls are equally involved in it. Other than the fact that Bubbles has already met Bliss, there isn't really anything that would justify this plot as a Bubbles episode only, considering that Buttercup and Blossom play just as much of a role here that she does. Bubbles isn't the central character, all 3 of them are. I'm not sure what the logic was in making this decision. We begin with Bubbles getting called out for breaking Blossom's Clean Locker Award and melting Buttercup's Candleman action figure, to which she responds by blaming it on Bliss, a teenager who has trouble controlling her emotions. Her sisters just write it off as another one of Bubbles' imaginary friends, but as we already knew before the show started, she's very much real. This is basically some foreshadowing and establishment for what's to come, as is the drawing that Bubbles picks up when describing that Bliss also has a tiny pet elephant. This episode is one of those character as an imaginary friend that the others don't believe is real but actually is real, as seen at the end. In other words, it's Imaginary Fiend all over again. We all know the Power of 4 special wouldn't be complete without one. Next we get a montage of Bubbles and her imaginary friends being a major inconvenience to the other girls, such as not letting Buttercup sit next to her on the bus or taking up all of the bed space. It's harmless really, and I do like the moment where the family's playing Sketchinary together. It's a small thing. The girls are supposedly going to this movie premiere later that night for Space Tow Truck, titled Space Tow Truck vs. Judge Dredd. He's approached the bench and blowing it up. Sounds interesting, I suppose, though this acts as a prime time to introduce the professor who says they're not allowed to attend the screening until they finish their chores. And then he throws in an unwanted monologue about how he was a fan of an older vehicle-themed show when he was their age. This show was called Earthplow the Radio Show, and featured this Earthplow character, named Earthplow, driving around Earth and plowing everything in sight. Don't read too deep into that. And how did the girls respond?
Earthplow? Eesh.
Eesh. Yourself, Buttercup. She just passes his show off as overacting, and then the professor flips out and leaves, so the girls are left doing their chores before the big night. Luckily, the episode skips past all the boring stuff, so we don't have to watch the girls rake leaves and clean the bathroom, and we reconvene when Blossom and Buttercup hear Bubbles break some plates over in the kitchen, so they fly on over to see what's up.
It was... Bliss. Right. And where exactly is this Bliss? She left.
Okay, see, the issue here is that Bubbles' sisters don't believe her in the slightest, and for good reason. I mean, she doesn't provide a single morsel of evidence whatsoever, so it's kinda hard to believe she's telling the truth. And again, considering her past history of imaginary friend having, I can't blame her sisters for doubting her. Also, there's a Who's on First reference.
Me. You? No, the elephant. Wait, who? Me. What about you? Oh, I think she means the elephant is me. Wait, you're an elephant?
What's the guy's name on first base?
Now, what is on second?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who is on first?
I don't know.
He's on third. We're not talking.
Yeah, it's a pretty common gag that's been done before elsewhere, but hey, it fits. I just hope they didn't choose to name the elephant me so they could do this little gag and not for a bigger, more important reason, but I have an inkling that that's not the case after all, and I'll discuss that when I get to it. Buttercup takes Blossom behind the counter so that she can talk with her about what to do with Pigtails over there, considering she might ruin their chances of going to see the movie that night. After some brief discussion, the two look around the corner and are greeted with this.
Hello, sisters. We were just talking about you.
to which Blossom exclaims that if they don't stop her, they're not going to make it to the movie. Or they could just do her chores themselves. I don't know, the first option seems like a bit of a stretch. I'd just give up on Bubbles doing her share at that point and tell the professor she didn't do any of the work. Not that he'd do anything about it. We don't really know what they do in the meantime though, considering it just cuts to later that night when they're already in the theater. So apparently Bubbles' chores still got done and they got to go see the movie regardless. Buttercup's perfect plan essentially boils down to the fact that they've tied Bubbles up to a hand truck so that she can't really get out. Because if rope can hold the girls back, anything can. They chit-chat a bit until the professor arrives and exclaims that he's invented a brand new multi-purpose pen that's capable of shooting a heat ray, a mobilization beam, signal flares, and it's a back scratcher.
Wow!
Is there anything this pen can't do? Although it's stuck on the immobilization setting for the time being, but the professor doesn't realize that until he finishes stunning a bunch of innocent teenagers who are minding their own business in the audience. Stick a pin in that, it'll come in handy in a few minutes. The professor, realizing that he can't heat up the leftover popcorn kernels with his fancy new invention, gets up to go buy some more, which leads to my favorite gag for the entire episode.
I'll take a small popcorn, please.
For $1 more, you can get a medium.
That does equal savings. Okay then, one medium, please.
For $1 more, you can get a large.
That's capitalism for you. That's how they get you. Meanwhile, the movie starts and we get to see Space Tow Truck fly around for all about 30 seconds until Earthplow busts through the screen because apparently he's a real character and not made up for a radio show from the 50s. Where did he come from? Why is he here? How is this motorized vehicle alive? I have no idea and we'll never find out because these are all questions that never get addressed in the episode. But I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that it is now confirmed canon that the Powerpuff Girls reboot takes place in the same continuity as Pixar's Cars trilogy. He says he's here because he claims,
I was the original galactic service vehicle. That is, until that hack space tow truck came along.
Since when is he an intergalactic plow? What? The preview the professor gave us showed him working on Earth. I mean, his name is literally Earthplow. The dude was never established to have traveled in space before, so where did this come from? Again, another question we never have an answer to. Everyone boos him because he sucks, and, well, he does, so he proceeds to do the only thing any performer would do to their critics. Slaughter them mercilessly. He begins to rip apart the theater, which causes the Powerpuff Girls to spring into action while everyone else flees the room, although since they suck at fighting, they get defeated very easily. Like, it's not even shocking, this is the norm for the show, so this shouldn't even be a surprise for anyone by this point.
But the show has only just begun!
I love how the show tries to act like the girls getting pinned down is a big deal with serious suspense and tension when it happens practically every single time a villain shows up. It's hysterical.
Your one-man show is about to get canceled.
I'll one-man show you!
Can I just say that the writing for Earthplow here has got to be some of the worst villain dialogue in the show? I mean, it's not stellar to begin with, but the dude barely has any thought put into him. He literally repeats the same bland quip twice.
But now, my captive audience, I love a captive audience!
Like they didn't even try. His character clearly did not have any passion or creativity put into him, and is easily one of the worst aspects of Find Your Bliss. Heck, I'd say he's one of the worst villains in all of season 2. There is no effort here. Bubbles is also entirely useless for this fight. She just roams around the theater floor screaming for Bliss to come save them because apparently the girls aren't strong enough to save themselves. And oh boy, believe me, that will be an issue that continues onward. Yep, after enough crying for help, Bliss finally shows herself and saves Blossom and Buttercup from Earthplow by blasting them away in an entrance that I deem a little overkill. But hey, it's the introduction to this new character, so at least I'm glad it made this interesting.
Nobody messes with my sisters.
Sheesh. Think you could have drawn that line out any more? Can you please talk just a little bit faster? Anyways, Bliss reveals herself and the girls are like, whoa, Bubbles, you weren't lying after all. And Bubbles is like, yeah, dude, I told ya. And Bliss is like, I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. And I'm just kidding, they don't say anything like that, really. They're just like, sisters? And that's that. Yeah, apparently Bubbles didn't realize Bliss was her sister, even though literally nobody else on Earth exists with the same anatomy that the Powerpuff Girls do in this show, that we know of. So it wouldn't take a genius to be like, oh snap, aren't you an aged up Powerpuff? Even if she didn't make a sister connection, the least she should have done is been like, whoa, there's more than just 3 of us? Whatevs, in comes the professor in what I've already said numerous times on other videos or projects as the best professor moment in the entire series, really. I mean, this doesn't make him look stupid or dumb by any stretch of the imagination. He is genuinely serious and captivating like the old professor would be, and I truly wish he'd be like that more. I mean, the dude literally tases Bliss and tells his daughters, she'll be safe now, in a rather serious tone. The music plays this dramatic ambiance to reflect the mood, and it's just like, damn, that was really captivating. I sincerely did not see that coming.
She'll be safe now.
Besides, the episode ends with the best character in the entire reboot saying, plot twist. I couldn't ask for a better ending. I mean, Barry rocks. Barry fucking rocks. I'd say this is a very solid start to the Power of 4 special, and I'm glad that we've got a good episode on our hands to kick things off. Had the first episode been a dud right off the bat, I think that would have hurt how people would view the rest of this special severely. Thankfully, this first part did manage to do a lot for me, and as a result, I kept going forward with an open mind. I think the biggest flaw of this reveal is that the entire thing was ruined before the special even premiered. Now, to be fair, Cian was only ever posting silhouette images online as seen here to kinda keep the identity of Bliss a secret. I still recall how I felt during the first time watching that unexpected twist. I was genuinely intrigued where they were taking this, but I was disappointed that I already knew who Bliss was and what she looked like and everything. But oh well, it's not a deal breaker. Now, where this cliffhanger ends up, well, that's what the next segment is for. There are some pieces of Find Your Bliss that are definitely flawed, but overall, I enjoyed this for what it was. It was a good build up to the story arc that continues over the next 4 episodes, and I don't have much else negative to say about it besides the fact that Earthplow sucks. This was a solid start. Good job, reboot.